I'm Jana with Purl Together. We're working on our Lovella shawl knit along, and hopefully you've cast on and you're well into that first increase section. I wanted to make a technique video today about kind of troubleshooting the Lovella pattern in case you get off in your stitch counts between that short side and the long side, and what to do, how to track down what row you're on if it hibernates for a little bit, or you get interrupted, or you're just watching a good movie and not paying attention. That's me. So I'll show you what I've done to help myself stay on track. And also, you'll get to see me do a little lettering down surgery on my shawl with the central double decrease where I messed it up. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to all my patrons. Thanks so much for supporting the channel. If you want to learn how to become a patron, you pledge a small monthly amount, and then in trade, as a thank you for your small monthly pledge each month and supporting these videos coming to you each and every week, I offer several benefits like patron knit night, discounts on events, things like that. So head over to patreon.com/Purl Together and you can see what's going on. All right, let's get started. Okay, so the reason we have this short side and a long side is because the rate of increasing and decreasing is different. So we're increasing initially much slower on this side than we are on this side. And you can tell that when you look at the pattern. The designer has graciously indicated, for example, in the increase section on your pattern, you'll notice that she has indicated +2 stitches on row 2, and then just a +1 on row 4. So what I want you to understand here is it's helpful to read our knitting. So if you need to make yourself a chart, if you get off track and you need to make yourself a chart, I'll show you what I've made something similar to this, and I'm covering this because I'll show you the bottom part in a minute. But if you have a 4-row repeat as you do in the increase section, at the end of your first 4-row repeat, you should have 5 stitches on the short side, your center spine stitch, and then 6 stitches on the longer end. And then you can see the pattern. You're increase 1 each time on the short side and 2 on the long. Now, this is after each full 4-row repeat. So you'll notice that the designer asks you to repeat the increase section 33 times. So you can make yourself a spreadsheet or a chart that has, 33 rows like this, and you'll always know if you're off or not. That way, if you are, you know you're only 4 rows from getting back to where you were correct. And then you can just make, either cross it out or just make check marks as you go along. Now, it's helpful to understand the reason for this and how this works. Well, at least it's helpful to me. I like to know why things are the way they are. Now, this is the direction of knitting. So as you know, we knit from right across our garment to the left. So you start off with the knit one, then you have a KFB or an increase, and that increases 1 stitch. And you do the same thing at the end of the row, sometimes, on some of the rows. But if you have that central double decrease in the middle, then you subtract 2 stitches. So when you have a KFB at the front of the row and at the end of the row, it's canceled out by the central double decrease, and you have a net increase of 0, okay? So that would be the case, for example, in the increase section, that would be the case with row 1 with color 2. So that's just keeping in pattern, but there's no stitch count difference there. Alternatively, when you have a decrease, for example, and you just knit straight across to the center, do your central double decrease and knit across the other way, as is in the case in decrease section 1, row 1, you'll have a net of -2. So that's how she's achieving the shaping, and it's helpful to know that if you have to troubleshoot and go back and find your mistake. So let's say I go along and I'm not really paying attention, or I've been watching a movie, or I got interrupted, or the phone rang, or something happened, any number of things. We all get interrupted. And now I don't know where I am, and maybe even I forgot to mark off a couple rows or make those tick marks on my sheet. And so now, or maybe you've just had this in hibernation for a little while and you really have no idea where you are or what row you're on. How might you find out? Well, when you knit a front and back, you go in from the front and through the back, and then you knit it off. And when you do that, it makes a little blip. So you see that right there? That's a knit front back. So if I'm looking at the decrease section number 1, I know that there's some times when I knit through the front and back at the beginning of the row. So color 2 has to be either row 1 or row 5. I know that for a fact. And I can see the knit front and back right here, because when I knit into the back of color 1, it leaves a little blip right there. And that's what that is. So this has to be row 5, whereas this row that's on my needle cable right now doesn't have that blip. So this has to be row 1. Do you see what I mean? So you can read your knitting and determine what row you're on if you know the section that you were working on when you put this down. The other thing you can do while you're determining which row is which by looking at the knit front and back, there's a blip right there, for example. You can also count your stitches and see if you can determine where you are that way. So when you count on the garter side, you're only going to count either the top arches or the lower arches, or the umbrellas and smiles. So but you're not going to count both. So if I'm only going to count umbrellas across the top, then that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so forth. And then I would try to look at my chart and figure out, if I knew this was row 5 or whatever row it is, how many does that correspond to on my chart? So here's the other thing I'm going to show you. I have an issue right here. I should have purled there and I didn't. So now I have however many rows that is of central double decreases that I'm going to try to take out and go fix that purl stitch. Now, would anybody notice that? Probably not, but I know it's there and it's irritating and I'm easily bothered by things like that. So my choices are either rip the whole thing back, however many rows that is, and then fix that, or ladder down if I can and fix the double decreases all the way up and do it that way. And I'm going to try it because why not? Because if I mess it up and make a mistake, I won't have lost anything by trying it. Okay, so you'd put this in here like this if you were ripping back, because that's where you'd want to stop to catch that purl stitch. But since I'm dropping down, I'm just going to carefully go and pick this out, being mindful of where all those decreases are. So there was one central double decrease, and I'm going to lift and do this gently and slowly, and hopefully I won't make a big mess. Well, I'm going to make a mess. But hopefully I'll be able to determine what to do with my mess. But you know what? If not, if I get myself confused and I get messed up, then okay, I'll rip it back and I haven't lost anything by trying. But this is how you learn. You know, this is how you figure out how the construction of things goes and how to do a little surgery on your knitting and maybe save yourself some time. There's no harm in trying it. Okay, I'm going back to here, so I'm about halfway down. And since I know how the central double decrease is constructed, and I know that I'm doing a central double decrease on every alternate row because we just do the purl on the way back, but every right side row is where that occurs. So hopefully I can put this back together. If not, I'll rip it, and that's okay. Okay, I am almost down. I have one more decrease to pull out. And then I'm down to this, which should be a knit, not a purl, right there. Okay. So now I'm going to go back in and I'm going to make this a knit stitch. I should have another needle. I'll have to go get another double point. That would be super helpful. Or I can just pull the cable through and use this one. Okay, that's what I'll do. I think I'm going to need this one to be a knit so that it's on the same row as the one I just did. So these three are what I want. Okay, I think. Whoops, and I just dropped it. Okay. So that green one needs to go back behind there. All right, now. Okay, those are the three I want. And what we know we do is we slip these two knitwise. We need to find the green strand that we're going to be using as our working yarn. So let me, oh, here we go. It's this one right here is our green strand that we need to use as if we were using that as our working yarn. So we need to bring this up. All right, not yet though. We need to slip these two as together, like we're knitting them. Now let's get a hold of that green one. Okay, then we're gonna knit that and take this over and we're gonna slip these two over just like we would normally. Okay, now we're on a green row, which means this goes with this. And there should be another one on the same row, which is here. Now I just want to make sure I haven't dropped anything behind there. I haven't dropped anything back there. So that row I think is done. Now I'm holding the color 1, or the darker color. And I think what has to happen now is you can see how this strand back here is coming off this stitch that I have. And I think I need to do a knit stitch on the middle one and the left one. And I think that I have this one twisted also. Okay, yep. All right, see there? This needs, these two here, the middle one and the left one, need to be knit stitches. So I'm going to take that over there, and I'm going to use this strand as if it's my working yarn, because this would have been where we purled back, actually. So this is our wrong side row that I'm doing now. And you can see how I'm just going to have, it's tedious. And if you feel like it's not worth it, then rip it back. I'll have to decide if I can carry on this way or not. I know my tension is a little weird here, but I really think that'll block out and be fine. And that bothers me a lot less than having a purl where it doesn't belong. One thing I want to show you though is to make sure that you keep your strands lined up in order. So for a moment, I was picking up this one next and knitting with it as the working yarn rather than the one that actually comes next, which is down below here. And you can tell that because you can pull on it and see that that's the next one in line, so to speak. So just be careful that if you're going to attempt this, that you have your strands that go across and that you're knitting with, that you're doing it in the correct order. Otherwise, things will not look correct. I know that these 3 stitches here in the middle are the ones I'm going to do my central decrease because that follows the line of the spine. So again, I'm just going to slip these 2 together. I'm going to use my next solid color strand there to knit this one. Then put that back over on the right hand needle and slip these 2 over just like we do when we're knitting it originally. All right. So that all looks correct. Now you can see that this is the next strand here that I need to knit all 3 with. I have a video on how to pick up stitches that you've lost and how you know if you're doing a knit stitch or a purl when you're laddering down. I'll link that down below in the video description if you're interested to know how you would do that differently for a knit stitch or a purl. Hey, thanks for watching. If you find these videos helpful, please consider subscribing, give me a thumbs up down below. I really appreciate your support.